Is, oh, hi everyone. Thank you for coming. We've got about 4 minutes, and although I don't think anyone else is going to show up because there is no room. Great. So people told me, you're up against Anders. You're probably not going to get a whole lot of people here. And I said, well, I'm not above giving out bribes. I mean, that's beneath Anders, but not beneath me. So you guys had a good time at the attendee party? Good, good. You guys enjoying the conference? Yeah, me too. And I'm really excited to be here to talk to you because now I can talk. You guys mind if I get started early? Nobody minds, right? Okay, good. Let's get going. So my name is Phil Hack. I'm a program manager at Microsoft with the ASP.NET team. And today what I want to talk about is how to develop mobile web applications with ASP.NET MVC4, jQuery, and HTML5. So we have a lot of features in ASP.NET MVC4, and I would love to cover them all, but I'm going to take a focusing mostly on the mobile targeting, in part because that's a really interesting area. So there are 3 things I want you to know after this talk. And if I do my job well, at the end of this talk, you'll know these 3 things, which is why supporting mobile devices is important. Hopefully by now you already know this, but for those who are holdouts, kind of like I was, I'll recap that. I also want to give you some tips that you can use to improve your existing websites. These are tips that hopefully you can go home today and use some of them today, and then some of them you'll be able to use with ASP.NET MVC4. And then I want to tell you about what we're doing in ASP.NET MVC4 to make developing sites for mobile devices easier and fun. So if you didn't know by now, mobile's huge. You're hearing it all throughout the conference. And by mobile, we're not just talking about phones, right? We're talking about slates and tablets and all sorts of form factors, anything that you carry with you. So there are 1 billion active mobile broadband subscriptions, so devices capable of really rich interactions with the internet. To put that in perspective, that's 1 device for every 7 people on the planet. And it's fast becoming the primary way that people browse the web. So as an example, in the US and UK, 25% of internet users say that they use mobile devices as their primary, if not only way of accessing the internet. In China, that's 30%. And you can see in India and Egypt, it goes to 59 to 70%. And when I look at this chart, I see India and Egypt as being the future for the rest of the world, right? In terms of people are more and more going to use mobile devices as their primary way, if not only way, to browse the web. And that raises a question for you. If your site looks awful on mobile devices, if you haven't done anything on it, are you being left behind? Is your site being left behind? And so, I want to tell you a story here. I was not that interested in mobile devices for a long time. I was a holdout. I didn't have a mobile phone for a long time. And I remember thinking, wow, this thing is getting really big. And I was starting to feel a little antiquated, like being left behind. So I bought a book on writing Objective-C and writing an app for iPhone. And I was, yeah. Well, let me finish the story. So I go in and I'm thinking, I'm going to write this is when iPhone was out. We hadn't yet launched the Windows Phone, and I was thinking, I'm going to write the next big app and make $1 billion and go retire in Tahiti, and don't tell my bosses. But so I go in and I write the app, and I get into Objective-C and Xcode, and I write this button that changes this label. You click the button, the label text changes. And after I was done with that, after 3 hours, I said, I am not doing this again. And what I realized is even if I was awesome at that, now if I want to target a different device, I want to target the Android. I've got to go learn Java. If I want to target Windows Phone, I'm going to go learn Silverlight. So what I realized is that what I really want, and what I imagine many of you really want, is I want to leverage my existing skills. Because to my core, I'm a web developer. And I thought, man, if I could just target these devices in a rich way with my existing web development skills, how cool would that be? And that's sort of what the power of HTML5 brings, jQuery mobile, and especially when combined with ASP NET MVC4. So at this point, I want to write mobile apps. What do I do? Well, it turns out there's a continuum. I can start and I can do nothing. You always have the option of doing nothing. Or I can change the client to adapt to the mobile devices. Or I can change the server side and give different markup and different resources, like script files, images, to the client based on the device info that's sent to the server. So for my first demo, I'll show you doing nothing. So, thank you, please. I spent hours preparing for that demo. And you'll notice there, how much did that cost me? Didn't cost me a dime, but this is the kind of result you get when you do nothing, right? So this is my blog before I did anything to it. And the text is really small. You can't even see the text in the top right. It looks pretty awful. And I realized that, yeah, I'm missing out on people who might want to read my blog on mobile devices. Like I said, 70% of people in Egypt can't read, well, they can read it, but it's a bad experience, right? And so while it seems like doing nothing is cheap, doesn't cost you anything to do nothing, it's sort of short-sighted to say that, right? It's costing you in the long run. So for the next demo, I want to show you a technique called adaptive rendering. So let me switch over here. So what I have here is a default ASP.NET MVC 3 project. So this is a project from the previous version, the RTM version of MVC 3. And when I run this, it's a decent, okay-looking template. But let's look at it in the mobile phone. So if you haven't seen this before, this is the Windows Phone 7 mobile emulator. I'll give you a pro tip here. If you hit page up when you're in there, you can actually start to use the keyboard to do this. So I was, for the first few weeks when I was preparing my demo, I was like, click, click, click. But it turns out you can just do this. And now I can type and save you all from having to watch me click around. OK. So you can see here that it doesn't look horrible, but these links here are really small. Trying to click these things, and you have to typically you have to pan around the text and all that. But it turns out that there's one simple change I can make to the site to make it look better. So this is one of the tips that you can do today to your existing site. And chances are it might make it look better, although it's not a panacea. And that is using the meta viewport tag. Meta. Did I do that, Matthew? Oh, yeah. So you notice there that the browser doesn't change, but when I go in here, and just to ensure that I get a refresh, what you can see there is that the layout has changed. So the viewport tag is a way of saying that by default, what a mobile device will do is it'll try to give you a desktop viewport. And so that's why everything gets kind of really shrunk. But with the viewport tag, you can tell the site that the device, I want you to adapt yourself to the device width. So you notice there that the buttons are big, easy to touch with my finger and click on those things. So just by that one tag, I've made my site look a little bit better. Now, like I said, it's not a panacea. Sometimes you have to play around with that tag a little bit. And currently, it's a recommendation, but it seems to be the de facto standard. It's not yet a full standard. But that's just one thing you can do today to make your site look better. Now, let's go back to the default project. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a new MVC4 project. And you notice here that there's this new internet, intranet. You saw those in MVC3. But we also have a new mobile application project template. That project template is for sites where you're specifically targeting mobile devices, and it's not one that you're going to switch back to desktop. And the reason we have that in there is that there are many cases where you just have a completely different site, like your m.example.com versus the full site. So, but our default internet application, as you saw in Scott Guthrie's keynote, is designed to adapt itself to mobile devices as well and look really nice. So let me show you this. So I'm going to hit Control F5. Let's launch this. And just wait. Let's try that again. Control F5. Come on, guys. I didn't change my, oh, yeah, see, thank you. You have to set this as startup project, Control F5. And now it's thinking. And in a second here, bam. So what we have here is our default ASP.NET MVC4 project template. So as Scott showed you, it's much nicer looking as before. Matthew Osborne here, who's a developer in the front row, put a lot of effort into making this look nice. Looks really great on the desktop. But let's check it out in the mobile device. So 26,475. Let's remember that. And look at that. It looks great in the mobile device. These links are big. I can easily, if I had a Windows 8 machine, I could touch that and click on those things. Scroll down, you can see that the layout itself has adapted to the dimensions of the device. So how did we do that? Well, we use a technique called adaptive rendering using CSS3 media queries. And let me show you the effect of that. And you saw this in Scott's demo. And I'll show it again because I love this part, where you see here we have the desktop layout. But once I hit a certain point, just watch carefully, everything sort of pops and the layout is different. And it truly is different. We're not just using tricks with CSS floats to do that. We've changed the layout. And the way we've done that is in our site.css. Let me just do a search for @media. You can see here we have this @media query, or this media query. And what this is saying is that this block of CSS applies when the width of the browser is less than 850 pixels, 850 and less. So when I'm scrolling that down, I hit 850, pop, all these CSS rules start to come into play and change the layout. What's really nice about this approach is that I don't need to do any browser detection. I don't need to do any device detection. I just set these things up, and based on the capabilities of the device, these things happen. And when you rotate your device, sometimes this gets a little trickier, but you can rotate the device and have different widths at different points, all sorts of things. Really cool stuff. Okay. Just go back to that. So that's adaptive rendering. So what are the benefits of adaptive rendering? Well, as I mentioned, it's optimized for the current device. I don't have to do detection, and it figures out, you write your CSS in such a way that it adapts to the specific dimensions you care about. It's also less duplication of effort. If you notice there that I didn't have separate views for mobile devices and desktop devices, right? It's just a single one. But there are some cons to this approach. It glosses over the differences between mobile and desktop. So for example, if I have a shopping cart application, I might want on a desktop to have all 3 steps in a single page because you have a lot of screen real estate. But on a mobile device, I might want to change the workflow to be 3 different distinct steps. And so it's very hard to do that with adaptive rendering. The other thing is it's a bandwidth hog. Especially like when you think about other countries where they meter bandwidth and they charge for it. I'm sending out everything that either a desktop and a mobile device needs, even though the mobile device doesn't need all that extra stuff, all the extra CSS or all the extra script files. And so if you want to really optimize the bits you're sending over the wire, adaptive rendering doesn't go far enough. So the takeaway right now is if you do absolutely nothing, at least add a viewport meta tag and make sure that things fit nicely in your screen. And so this is an example of just adding the viewport tag to my blog. It now looks like this when you look at it in the mobile device. And it's, so by default, it's easy to read. And you can scroll to the right to see all the stuff you don't care about. But that looks nice. So the next thing I want to show you is display modes and jQuery mobile. Let me just do this. Just close that so it doesn't get in my way. Here we go. So let's hit Control F5. And what I have here is an application called Conference Session Browser. So it's a typical ASP.NET MVC desktop application. And now when I say desktop, I mean desktop rendered. Wow, that looks horrible. Let me hit Control F5. There you go, caching. So you can see here it's a typical application. This might be like something like an existing website you might have today. Now click on these links. Browse by speaker, browse by tag. Click on a speaker, and I can see the list of sessions and so on. So this has all the sessions from build in there. So let's take a look at it in the Windows Phone emulator. Okay. Oh, yeah, I did. Okay. How do you do a Control F5 in the Windows Phone emulator? Here we go. Let me try clicking the home link. Okay, well. So you can see here that it looks even worse than I planned. Doesn't look too bad. But if we start clicking on these links here, you can see like this table is kind of rough to look at in a mobile device. Right? So I'm using the default template, but it doesn't look, it could be improved. And what we're finding here that with tables like this, where I'm trying to fit a table in a mobile device, adaptive rendering doesn't go far enough. So one of the new key features that we have in ASP.NET MVC 4 is the ability to send different views for different devices. Let's look at that. So here I have the index view. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to specify a mobile.cshtml extension. So this mobile pertains to a display mode. So we have a display mode by default registered named mobile. And you can have any kind of display mode you want. I'll show you how to do that in a second. But here, if I enter mobile here, and then let's go edit that view. Let's double check that index.mobile.cshtml. Now I'll put something in here to say, hey, this is a mobile device. And now when I refresh this and go to the home page, we can see there that it says mobile, mobile. So rather than picking up the desktop view, it's picking up the mobile view. Now let's go back to the home page here. Let's make sure that this didn't change. I'm going to hit Control F5 a few times. And you can see there that the desktop didn't change. So now I have the ability to target different views for different devices. Now, let's say I want to match different browsers. You might be saying, well, Phil, you're succumbing to the Redmond reality distortion field. We all know we really want to target Androids or iPhones. So let's take a quick look at how we can do that. And perhaps there are different kinds of display modes that you want to target that I haven't even thought of yet. So what I'm going to do here is go in global.asax.cs, the place where all things are registered. And I'm going to use a snippet here to add a custom display mode. Oops. Wow. OK, let's try that. There we go. Now I'll use Control Dot to import the namespace. And let's dig into this code right here. Just zoom in there so you can all see that. Oh, actually, zoom out. Actually, this is a small room. You can all see this. So what we have here is a new top-level static property called displayModes.modes. And you notice here I'm inserting at position 0 this new display mode. And the reason I'm putting it at 0 is this display mode is more specific than mobile, right? This is specific to iPhone. So what we do when we look at display modes is we go in order from top to bottom, or first to last. And we look at the display mode and we ask it, can you handle this particular request? So when I create the default display mode, I give it a suffix, iPhone. And then I have this condition here. And this condition represents the question I'm asking. Can you handle this request? And you notice here I'm using a lambda, or a predicate here, and returning this Boolean value. Context.request.userAgent contains iPhone. So I'm doing a bit of a naive approach here, right? Like this is case sensitive. But for the purposes of demo, I just need this thing to return true or false. This is the answer to the question. Can you handle this? Can you handle this request? So let me build that. And if you were watching closely, you notice I accidentally closed Solution Explorer when I meant to minimize it, but that's OK. There we go. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to my views. And I already have an index.mobile, so I'm going to copy this again. And I'm going to use the new suffix that we created, iPhone. Double check I'm editing the right one. Okay, let's get rid of all this. So I need to think of something that will make this view look iPhone-y. All right, so let's visit this in the browser. Nothing's changed, as we expect. Let's visit it in the Windows Mobile. Nothing's changed, as we expect. And now I have an iPhone simulator here. And if I can click in there. And we can see here we've got this nice looking iPhone-y display. So with using a custom display mode, I can now target iPhone specifically. By the time we ship, we may add some more by defaults in the box. We haven't yet decided what that range should be. That's the kind of thing we'd love to hear from you guys, what we should do there. So one of the other things I want to point out is that display modes are completely customizable. So you notice here we're using suffixes. If you wanted to actually use subfolders, there's a way to hook in there and use subfolders instead of suffixes. So all of that is extensible. OK. So even with this, you notice here that, like I mentioned before, this layout still looks kind of ugly. So what can we do to make it look really nice across all different mobile devices? And this is where jQuery Mobile comes in. And like I mentioned earlier, we do have a template specifically for mobile devices that includes jQuery Mobile. In our default template, we don't yet include it. But we do have a package out there using NuGet that you can install into your project to really make targeting mobile devices really easy. And this is something that you saw Scott Guthrie show in his keynote. If you're not familiar with NuGet, NuGet is a package manager for Visual Studio. It's a really quick and easy way to get libraries from the cloud into your project. So these are libraries that you may have heard of, like third-party open source libraries, free libraries, and so on. And so when I click on the Online tab here, I can go into Local. I'm going to install it locally just because I don't want to trust that the internet is fast here. And I'm going to install jQuery Mobile.mvc. And so this is a package that is available now. And what it's going to do is it's going to add a set of it's going to add jQuery Mobile to my project, but it's also going to add a layout page. Let's go look at that. You can see here it added this layout.mobile.cshtml. So let's compile this. And let's hope that this works again. Okay, wow, let's just click home. Bam. Okay, good. Now we're back. Now we're talking. Now we have a site that looks much nicer already, targeted towards mobile devices. But it's not that interesting yet. Let's add a logon link to the header. So I'm going to go into the header here and just use the. So if you didn't notice what I did there, I just typed A and then hit Tab, and we used the snippets in Visual Studio. Really nice feature if you're not familiar with that. So I'm going to type a logon link, account controller, and let's give it the text log on. Okay? So refresh this. You see there that we got this nice looking logon link, but it looks like a mobile-y. Not that that's a word, but it looks like a mobile logon link, right? It's not like just your usual blue text with an underline. It's designed for mobile devices. That's the thing that jQuery does, is it sort of, or jQuery Mobile does, is it provides these widgets that's all controlled through markup and using HTML5 data attributes. So as an example, let's actually spruce this up a little bit. I'm going to add a data-icon equals gear. And I want to move it over to the right. So I'm going to use a CSS class. Now, all of these special classes I'm using, these data attributes, they're all in the jQuery mobile documentation. As you can see, I haven't memorized them all, and I wouldn't expect you to. But once you start to use them often, they become really handy. So you notice there that after I change those attributes, the icon is now on the right side, and it has this nice-looking gear icon. So let's go and let's go update the home page. So going back to the home page, we're going to optimize this home page for mobile devices. So I'm going to delete the old ones that I created. We don't need those anymore. And then go through the same process of excuse me. Okay. So one of the things you'll notice here is that there's no navigation yet. The new layout doesn't include the navigation in the layout because we want to adjust the navigation based on each page. Each page might have different navigation requirements. Plus, we know you have the phone's back button, so might as well take advantage of that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the old layout. I'm going to grab these navigation links, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to tweak them for mobile devices. So just get rid of all this. So one of the things I'm going to use is another data attribute. I'm going to specify that the role of this unordered list is a list view. So yet another jQuery mobile widget. And I'm going to set the inset to true. So it's inset a little bit. And I'm going to change this first link. Instead of linking back to where you already are, we'll set this to be a list divider. Let's say browse by. And since we're in a smaller device, we can terse this up a bit. I'm just turning nouns into verbs like nobody's business here. So after doing this, refresh this. Look at that. That's a nice looking home page for your mobile device, right? And all with just a little bit of markup changes, we now have this nice navigation on the home page. And it's easy to touch that with your finger to navigate. And it looks really good in the mobile. There's another thing you notice there, what appeared at the top. There's this thing that we call the view switcher. So very common within a mobile application is that some people really want the desktop view of the site, and they don't want your mobile optimized view for whatever reason. And so you can click on this, and now we're back to that ugly desktop view. Problem though, how do I go back? So what we need to do is we need to add to the desktop view the view switcher. So what I'm going to do here is go back to the desktop layout. And somewhere at the top here, I'm just going to pick a spot. I'm going to use HTML.partial view switcher. So this view switcher was added when we installed the jQuery mobile MVC package. So now when I do this and hit refresh, oh, now you decide to pick up the right desktop style. OK, so now we see that the view switcher is back up there. I can switch back to mobile view, desktop view, mobile view, and just go back and forth all I want. But let's take a look at this page, right? This is the desktop page. And you notice here that we're not showing the view switcher in the desktop browser. It's not common that from a desktop browser you want to switch to a mobile view, so the view switcher doesn't render itself when you're looking at desktop view. Let me take a quick look at the view switcher, and we'll show you how that happens. So you can see here we have a little bit of logic. If the browser is a mobile device and the method is get, then we show this. So if it's not a mobile device, then we're not going to show it. Now, if you really wanted your desktop browser to be able to click and show you the mobile view, you could just get rid of this line of code, and then it would appear. I'm not going to do that because that leads to all sorts of problems when you're running a demo, as I've learned in many, many dry runs. OK. So let's go back to the phone, and let's click on the speakers list. So that doesn't look horrible, but I think we can make it a lot. We just learned a technique. We can make this look a lot better. Let's do that. Oops. So what I'm going to do here is go back to the speakers list. I believe that's all speakers. I'm going to do the data role equals list view again. But I'm going to do something else now. I'm going to add something called a data filter and refresh this. And you'll notice here that not only do we have a nice looking speaker list, but you can quickly get to the speakers who matter. OK, so as you can see, now I'm back to the sessions table, and there's more work for us to do. So one of the things you're noticing is I'm having to go through each file and rename the file or copy it, rename it to .mobile, and then do it. And that gets a little bit tedious. And I found that to be tedious as I was writing these demos. And I realized that, you know, what I need is a little tool that could do that for me and rename a bunch of views at the same time. And I thought, man, if only I had a way of delivering tools to users in an easy way. So what I did is I wrote a recipe. And this is a new feature of MVC4. And as I mentioned earlier about how NuGets deliver libraries, NuGets can deliver recipes as well, which is modular tooling that you run within Visual Studio. And let me show you how this works. Now, again, this is developer preview. So there's a lot of changes we're going to make to how recipes work. So by the time you try this out, you never know, it might be broken. But well, no, it'll work. Trust me. So what I'm going to do here is first I'm going to go to NuGet. And I'm going to go to my local drive. And I have this mvchack.view mobilizer, because I am not good at naming things. Now, after installing that, I can right-click on the Views folder and go to the Add Run Recipe. This is likely to change as well. And you see here that I have a list of all the recipes installed. Now, we don't have any installed in the box, which is why I'm furiously trying to make some so that people can try this out. And this is the View Mobilize recipe. And when I hit OK, you see here it is showing a list of views that don't have a corresponding mobile one. And if I change the suffix, it will recalculate the list, because I can change the suffix to iPhone or whatever. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and check all the ones I want to convert. So I want to convert all dates, all speakers, all tags, sessions, session tables. And that looks good. I'm going to click Mobilize. And now you see here that I have mobile versions of all those views that I checked. Now, if you want to try the View Mobilizer with MVC4, I'm going to go ahead and push that to NuGet so that that's available for you. And it's this easy to push packages up to NuGet and push recipes up there. So now you can try it out if you and follow along from home. OK, so So now that I've done that, let's go fix up the dates, right? Dates look horrible. And this is a case where I think a snippet is in order, because you don't want to watch me type in all this stuff. So again, I use the list view, but here I just do a little bit of calculation so that when each day rolls over, I use a divider there. So little tricks to make things look better on mobile devices. So when I refresh that, I'm sorry, what? Oh, thank you. I did on the all dates. So let's copy that and go to alldates.mobile. I was being so careful up to this point. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And, oh, sorry. Let me go back to the, this is not the date view, is it? So date. OK, so now we have this nice looking date view. So let's do it again with session table. And make sure that I get the mobile view. So for the session table, you notice here that rather than using a table now, whoops, I'm going to take this table, and I'm going to replace this table with an unordered list, BLD-session table. And now when I click here, we get this nice list of sessions. Look at that. You know, and I love playing with this. I love playing with this inertia here. Kind of, you know, when you scroll down, it kind of feels like you're on The Price is Right, Showcase Showdown. Okay. All right. So let's click on a session, and we can make that look even better by going to the session details. Session table, session.mobile, and OK. And once again, just using the data role, list view, data insets, dividers where needed, and when I refresh this, we've made this site look a lot better, right? So with these few techniques, I mean, you can go in and make a really nicely optimized site, and I'm still reusing a lot of the logic, right? All my controller logic's the same, my models are the same. I'm just giving different views for different devices. Now, one cool thing that we get out of this that comes with jQuery Mobile is theming. So jQuery Mobile supports themes. It has a few built in, and you can go and, you know, for example, write your own. And let's change that to B. Now, I don't know why they named it A and B. I guess they're even lazier namers than I am, but you can see there that the theme changed when I did that. Oop. Yeah. Let's try one more theme just for fun. Try E. Ah, that's warm. That feels nice. OK. So, you know, one thing I would love to see is more themes with interesting names. You know, like, I'm sure there's a name that's escaping me right now that you're hearing a lot at this conference, right? But I don't know anything about that. OK. All right, so what I showed you there is using display modes and jQuery Mobile. So what are the benefits? Well, you get maximum flexibility with that approach, right? I can completely control which bits I send over the wire to mobile devices versus the browser. And because I can do that, it's efficient use of bandwidth. And so your customers who are metered all over the world will thank you for doing that. What the con is, it can be repetitive. Now, hopefully, with my view mobilizer, I've sort of helped that a little bit by at least getting rid of that one rote part of it. But a lot of the views are very similar in terms of the logic. But by using creative use of partials and so on, you can even get around a lot of that. The other part is device detection is not trivial. You'll notice that we have a set of browser files that are in the framework, but those can get outdated. One of the things that you'll want to look into is that there's a package from a company called 51 Degrees. So if you install that package, it adds a ton of device info to the browser files so that you can query things for width and height and all sorts of interesting information about the devices that are accessing your website. Question?
But you have to maintain that constantly.
Yeah, so the nice thing about 51 Degrees, though, being a NuGet package, is that NuGet will tell you when there's updates to the packages that are installed in your project. It's one of the key benefits of NuGet. Now, this isn't a NuGet talk, but since I also work on NuGet, I love talking about it. But if you've ever worked on a project where you're using a lot of third-party libraries and you reference a lot, and then you're ready to do the next version, you go through and try to figure out all the updates, NuGet can do that for you. So if you use the 51 Degrees package, then NuGet will help you keep that up to date. And they're working actively on it. Yes?
You also have to maintain it after deployment.
Oh, yeah. So the question is, do you have to maintain it after deployment? Yeah, you probably do, but typically, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, yes, you would have to maintain it after deployment. But typically, when new devices come out if what you've deployed doesn't look good on that, you would have to do a little bit of development anyway. So update it locally, deploy again. But that is a good point. And in general, I sort of recommend, try to target more broad and not get too nitty-gritty. Otherwise, you're going to get in a world of hurt. So there's a good question. What approach should you take? And the approach you choose really depends on the type of application you're building. Are you building brochureware, content? You might just stick with adaptive rendering. If you're building a real application, then you might choose the display modes. But now we want to turn the dial to 11 on this. There's something that my mobile app can't do that your native application can do, and that is work offline. For example, if I disconnect the internet here, let's see what happens. So I'm going to kill this web server. This is IS Express. And now when I click on this link, you can see, oh yeah, we don't know how to display this page. But for a native application, it's possible for that to work if it already has that information. So, switch back to. So what we're going to use here is HTML5. So in the title of my talk, I mentioned HTML5. And so far, I haven't really talked about what is HTML5. I haven't shown you anything about HTML5. But I've been using it the whole time, subtly, with the data attributes. And if I show you the layout, which I'll show you later, we're using the HTML5 doc type in our default project templates. And what HTML5 is a collection of technologies for modern browsers that support all these different things. Canvas video, geolocate. Geolocation is a really interesting one. Local storage, so storing things so that persistent storage that you can close the browser, open it, it's still there, not using cookies. Offline is the one I'm going to show you, and that's the ability for your application to work when it's not connected to the internet. And this starts to make your website really feel like a native application. Let me just close everything. So the first thing I need to do here is use something called a cache manifest. So interesting thing, I have demo notes, but I accidentally threw them out, so I have to do this all from memory. So cache equals / actually, I think it's manifest equals that. So Luckily, though, I have a finished version of the application. So I'm going to apologize here and have to cheat and look at the finished one to make sure I don't mess anything up. I don't know what that meant. Okay, let's try this one more time. Manifest equals? Okay, thanks. Okay, so I got it right. So what we have here is a manifest equals / cache.manifest. So your manifest is a file that's going to list all the resources that your application needs to pull down ahead of time so that it can work in an offline mode. So let's add that file. So I'm going to add a text file here called cache.manifest. The first line of a cache manifest file is cache manifest. So it feels kind of like Fight Club. The first rule of cache manifest is cache manifest. So what do I enter in here? Well, what I enter here is a bunch of URLs to resources. Fortunately, I have some of that available right here. So you can see here that I'm requesting, some images, some URLs. So I'm not putting every URL in here. I'm just putting a small subset to demo how this works, because later I'm going to show you an even better approach to doing this sort of application. Okay? So I've got that. It's one thing I'm missing. The manifest needs to be returned with a specific content type. And let's go into web config. And the way I can do that is in system.webserver, I can add a MIME type mapping for the .manifest. And thank goodness I have snippets. Okay. So you notice here I have the static content element. Let me just zoom in here. And I'm going to remove the .manifest because there's an existing registration for that. So like I said, I'll show you a slightly better approach later, but I wanted to show you sort of the raw approach here. And because removing this might break something else that I'm not aware of, but you never know. But I'm going to add this file extension .manifest and set the MIME type to text/cache.manifest. Now with that in play, I should be able to hit Control F5. Let's make sure the site still works. And in the desktop, nothing's changed, right? In IE. Unfortunately, IE doesn't support offline mode yet, so I'm going to have to use Chrome. You hear those choppers overhead? And in Chrome, I'm on the browser view now. And so I was very careful to choose specific URLs, right? So let's try this now. This is where I cross my finger and hope this works. I'm going to kill the web server. And if I did my job correctly, we can see here that it's still working. Thank you. To prove that I really did go offline, let's click on someone I didn't add to my manifest. And you can see here it's thinking, oops, can't find it. So I really did go offline. I'm now able to navigate the links that were in my manifest offline. But you might be thinking, wow, so in order to make this entire conference session browser actually work offline, I'm going to have every single URL in there. Well, yes, if you write your app in this way. But there's another way to write your web application. And this is an approach that we're starting to push in ASP.NVC4 that you'll see us do more in the next versions. Let me open up this project here. And I want to show you something that we included by default. Oh, not in this one. Let me close this one. And So I have another version of the conference session browser that my coworker Steve Sanderson sent to me. And if you don't know Steve Sanderson, really bright guy. He works on Knockout.js. He's also on our team. And in our default project templates, we're now including a library called Knockout.js. And what Knockout.js is a model view model. And if you've ever done Silverlight development, you've probably heard this term before. It's a model view model framework for doing JavaScript. And the idea here is that in traditional web development, you have links and you transition to pages. But in many cases, we want to write something called a single-page application. And so this is something that we'll be investing moving forward, providing guidance and templates for how you write a single-page application. And the way that works is you have a page with HTML and CSS and JavaScript. And from that page, you just call into services and update your view model, and data binding in the browser handles updating the views. So this is a version of Conference Session Browser written with that approach in mind. So let me just go ahead and launch it to make sure it works. And I'm going to do it in Chrome again. And hit Control F5. OK, so now we're on the new one. You can see here that it still works. Did you notice the back button? I'm using the back button. That works. But let me disconnect it. OK, there it is. And now it's still working, and I can click on people I've never met before, and still works. Let's try Aaron Cunningham. So you can see here I'm completely offline, but now my entire application works. How'd that work? Well, let's take a look. So you notice here, we have all these partial views in the home directory. Let's try that again. We have all these partial views, but there's only one main view, index.cshtml. And this is sort of where all the magic happens. And we reference scripts such as Knockout.js in there. Oh, I thought I opened it. Let's try that again. Now you're going to see here there's a lot of JavaScript going on, but it's actually not all that bad. We're just pulling in these different partials from JavaScript into this single page and then handling navigations. So I won't go into this code too much. The other thing I want to show you is this cache manifest controller. So you remember when I added that MIME typing? Well, Steve took a smarter approach than I did, and he realized that, well, if you just write a controller, this controller can specify the content type, and then it can write out all your resources. And if I go to cache.manifest, that's the entire manifest. You notice there that we've got the CSS files, the JavaScript files, but I didn't have to add an entry for every single URL on my site. Instead, there's one entry in here, if I can, home/all data, and that returns all the data for this site in a single JSON blob. Okay, I hesitate to do this, but look at that. So this approach uses MVC as more of a backend for your client application, right? Or what looks like a client-side application, even though you're running it in a browser. And so I'm not supposed to really, let me put it this way. You can imagine applications for that client-side application that you wrote where you can host it in other places, right? So it's an interesting way of developing web applications. But by doing it this way, we've made this possible to do an offline application with ASP NET MVC. So you'll see more investment in that approach moving forward. All right. I think there's one more thing. Oh, yeah. So I want to show it. So I've shown you this working in the emulators and all that stuff, but I do need to show it to you working on actual devices, right? Or you won't believe me. And so what I have here is a Windows Phone 7. Let me enter my passcode outside of the vision of this. Okay, and we got that, and do that on my iPhone here too. Okay. So what I've done already is I've already deployed this site that I've written, or the Steve Sanderson version of it, to the internet. Let's see. And now, unfortunately, I can't use a full keyboard, right? So I actually have to figure, let's see, build. Oh, there it is. So it's loading that JSON, the all data into it. And thank goodness. Okay, and now you can you guys see that okay? Do I need to adjust this at all? Contrast. Okay. There we go. Cool. So you can see here this works great. I can click date. Unknown time. Let's try another one. So the site looks pretty good in the Windows Phone. Now, unfortunately, the nice soft. I'm not running Mango, so I didn't get it installed in time. So it doesn't look as good as it could look. And the other unfortunate thing right now is that offline support doesn't work with Windows Phone 7. So I think the way to look at it, though, is by the time ASP.NET MVC 4 RTMs, hopefully offline will be supported in all major phone devices so that you don't have to worry about targeting, oh, shoot, these devices don't support it, these devices do. And the other way to look at it is also that you build your app in this way, the devices that do support it get this extra benefit, but the devices that don't still work just fine. So now let's try, I believe the iPhone does support this. So let's go build 2011 dot. This is fun using I've never used a mobile device in a talk before. Oh God, my hands look horrible, right? All right, so I'll hit speaker. Let's try doing the filtering here. There we go. And that filtering, just so you know, that filtering is all client-side when you use the data-filter. So, okay, so this is working. Let's go and moment of truth here. Go to the settings here, and we're going to turn off Wi-Fi. Boop. Complete with sound effects. Pow. All right. Turn off airplane mode or use Wi-Fi. Okay, fine. I don't need to because this is still going to work. Look at that. Woohoo! I'm just going to stay up here and keep playing with this because this is so fun. All right. Let's get back. So you can see there that that's a pretty nice looking site, just with a few little techniques that we've added to MVC4 combined with HTML5 and jQuery mobile. Oh, sorry, did that. OK, so at this point, oh, yeah, you know what helps if you switch to the laptop? So if I did my job well, you should know the answer to these three questions. Why is supporting mobile devices important? What is one tip you can use today to improve your existing mobile website? And what is at least one thing ASP.NET MVC4 is doing to make mobile web development easier? So if you know the answer to these questions at this point, I've done my job well. You should give me a really nice rating. And just to stack the deck in my favor, I'm going to tell you the answers. Supporting mobile devices is important because it is the primary way people are accessing the internet. And one tip you can do today, I mean, just if you forget everything I've told you, meta viewport, but adaptive rendering, media queries, all that stuff is good. But meta viewport is, if you're only going to spend 2 minutes, that can help your site. Now, I actually did it. Just an aside, I actually tried it. I downloaded Slashdot's markup, and I did it on Slashdot. And you had to fiddle with it a little bit, but I made Slashdot look a lot better because reading that in my mobile device is kind of a pain as well. So And now, I kind of want to do this campaign where I tell all these sites, please add this tag. And what is at least one thing ASP.NET MVC4 is doing to make mobile web development easier? Well, we're adding display modes, default project template, view switcher, and including we're not yet. We're including jQuery mobile in the mobile default project template. So for more information about some of the stuff, so you notice here that a lot of these sessions have already happened, unfortunately. So if you wanted to go see ASP.NET 4.5, but you can check it out online. These are related to some of the things that I've talked about, such as learning more about HTML5. There's a lot of cool stuff in HTML5 that I didn't cover, but these talks will cover that. And a book that I found really helpful, is completely free online, is Dive into HTML5 by Mark Pilgrim. That's a really good book if you want to get your hands dirty with HTML5. And if you want to find out more about ASP.NET MVC, as always, go to asp.net/MVC. If you go to /WAC MVC4 at the end, you'll see our release notes and information about MVC4. So that is how you write mobile web applications with ASP.NET MVC4, HTML5, and jQuery Mobile. Thank you.